Hi, good day, everyone. Welcome back to the Sustainable Agriculture Workshop here at Andrew College. And today we have Mr. Seth McAllister from the University of Georgia, Extension Agent. Welcome, Seth.
Thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Oh, that's no problem. So the first question I'll ask you, Seth, if you could give us a background, of yourself and why you end up in Extension.
Okay, so I grew up on a beef cattle farm up in Buena Vista, Georgia. I went to school at ABAC for my undergrad, and I did my master's through UGA Tifton. While I was down there, I worked on a research farm, and it focused mainly on row crop ag production. And that's where I kind of found my passion for ag, especially. I found this position in Terrell County back in 2016, and I applied. And it's big row crop ag production, a lot of big producers, cotton, corn, peanuts, soybeans, wheat. So I'm doing what I love, helping the people I love. So it's a great deal.
Oh, good. So could you tell us what projects you're currently working on?
So as an agent, I've focused primarily on ag technology and cover crop particularly. And I've also helped a lot of growers with irrigation management through moisture sensors. So our office has a drone, and I've helped other agents take pictures of their research plots and stuff, especially for research posters and presentations. And then, center pivot irrigation is a huge thing here in Southwest Georgia. Probably 70% of our production here in Terrell County is irrigated with a center pivot. And so helping producers figure out when to cut the pivot on and off can be a big deal.
Okay. Could you go into a little bit on what a pivot is about for some members of our audience who are not familiar?
Okay, so a center pivot is basically a big metal structure that has a pipe run through it, and that's how we irrigate a lot of our crops here. So most pivots make either a full circle or a partial circle, and they're irrigated either from a pond or a creek, or they may even be tied to a well. And so as the crop needs water and we're not getting rain, we can cut that pivot on and apply anywhere from 1/10 of an inch up to over an inch. And it really helps us get out of a bind when we get into a drought scenario.
Okay. Have there been any droughts in the Southwest recently?
Sir?
Has there been any droughts in the Southwest recently, in the Southwest of Georgia?
My first year here in 2016, it was really dry. We went almost 2.5 months in September and October with almost no rainfall. And that can be detrimental, obviously, to the crop, which needs moisture. But in certain crops, such as peanuts, a lot of people don't realize it, but peanuts, the pods grow underground. And so here in Terrell County, we have a heavier soil type. And even if you make the crop, it can be really, really difficult to harvest peanuts if it gets dry and we don't have enough moisture, because as you run a plow through the ground to try to flip those peanuts over and expose those pods to the sunlight so that we can get them harvested with equipment. If the soil's too hard and it's too dry, you can just break a lot of those pods off and not get them into the picker.
Oh, okay. So my question would be do you have any methods that let's say tomorrow and for the rest of the year we don't get any rainfall, right? Do you have any specific suggestions or methodologies you could suggest to some farmers who are in that position?
Absolutely. So there's a ton of technology available now. Some of the most common ones are moisture sensors. There are capacitance sensors that measure how much moisture we have in the soil profile. And then there are watermark sensors that are, they take moisture in and out of the soil and tell you how much is available for the crop to extract. And so what's cool about that is if we have different moisture sensors at different depths, earlier in the season, we can tell exactly how deep the crop roots are within our soil profile. What can be important about that is as certain crops develop to a certain stage, crop water use may be more important than other stages. So corn, for instance, the first 30 to 40 days after we plant corn, it's a little bit more drought tolerant and a little bit less sensitive to drought stress. So if we get dry, it's not going to affect your yield that much. However, once corn gets up head high and it's starting to pollinate, if we don't get moisture at that crucial time frame, it can be astronomically effective at reducing our yield and our quality of our corn.
Oh, okay. So it sounds like you deal with more of the bigger farms, right? The huge farms, the corn, the peanut farms and stuff like that. Do you
Yes,
think
sir.
that the irrigation methods you suggesting is applicable to like somebody in a smaller farm environment and practice sustainable agriculture?
Absolutely. Yes, sir. So, yeah, historically, my farmers here in Terrell County are averaging probably between 1,200 to 6,000 acres
Oh,
of row
wow.
crops. So, yeah, they're big, heavy hitters in their crop production. But I think that absolutely, I mean, I grew up on a 300-acre farm, and I understand that, agronomically speaking, it can be challenging for capital when if you got a 30-acre hayfield and you've only got a few mama cows, you don't
Right,
have nearly the capital to invest that somebody has 5,000 acres of cotton does, just because you don't have the cash flow.
right,
But I think there's still a big fit for some of these. I mean, to a certain extent, it's more important for that little guy to make a crop, because if he doesn't make a crop, he doesn't have anything to feed his cows. You know what I'm saying?
right, right.
So absolutely, I think it's important. We may have to be a little bit more fiscally responsible on our input costs. I think some of the big guys are more worried about convenience than cost in certain
Mhm.
scenarios. But I think there's definitely some management strategies that are either cheaper or less capital investment heavy that would be suitable for the smaller producer that could absolutely make them either more efficient or more sustainable long term.
Because I'm thinking like, most of those big farms, especially when you have 6,000 acres, right?
Mhm.
Indians definitely definitely will play a major part, because
Exactly.
you go be out there by yourself. Let's say if you're on 300 acres, you could probably water yourself.
Yes, sir.
Doing it, but at 6,000 acres, um, you definitely have to go with convenience. So,
And that's what it boils down to. I mean, I helped with the Ag Wet project that UGA sponsored for the last several years. And basically, we took a bunch of agents and a bunch of producers from all over the southeastern and southwestern parts of Georgia. And we looked at irrigation management strategies utilizing moisture sensors, particularly for cotton and peanuts. And what we saw with a lot of that study is some of the smaller growers preferred a cotton irrigation app that was free, but it was a lot more management intensive that you had to input your irrigation or input your rainfall, and it forecasted what your water use would be based on an algorithm. And then a lot of the larger producers in that system, they really favored the moisture sensors that were more capital investment heavy on the front end, but they took into account exactly what you irrigated and they ran your algorithm for you. So they just basically told you when to cut the pivot on and off. There was no input of, oh, I need to irrigate the
right,
Smith field today and the Leverett farm tomorrow.
right.
It automatically did it for you, and all you had to do is hit the button.
Oh, so let me ask you this question as being an extension, right? So, the age of the farmers in America is actually getting older, right?
Absolutely.
Do you find it like, do you get difficulty in getting the older farmers to say to adopt that technology?
I've seen some of both. It's kind of interesting, the older farmer that has been around and he has 50 plus cropping seasons under his belt. He is a creature of habit. I'm not going to negate that, but he has not stayed successful farming for 50 years because he was unwilling to change whatsoever. You know, that's kind of the fine balancing act we see. I see some young guys that are old school and don't want to change what they're doing. They want to do what their father or grandfather did. And
Mhm.
I've seen older school producers that were um, more tech savvy than I am, honestly. But probably traditionally, I would say that the older producers are a little bit slower to adapt to some of the newer technology. And when they either have a son or a newer farm hand that's a little more tech savvy and a little more comfortable with some of the technology, I think that it has opened their eyes to see that sometimes this technology is expensive or it's a little bit out of their comfort zone in their operation, but it can definitely make them more efficient.
But a farmer will ask a question, let's say, if you play devil's advocate, right? A farmer will ask a question, okay, so if I implement the more expensive technology, would I see a greater yield in the crop, or would I see just a little bit of increase, or just see no yield at all?
Well, it depends on the circumstance. I mean, in that particular ag wet trial, we saw a couple scenarios where we saved water use by using those moisture sensors. And ironically, in one year, we saw a couple fields where we actually used more water than we would have. And my argument is, either we were watering when we didn't need to, when we weren't using them, or we weren't watering as effectively as we could have. So yeah, the goal is ideally we use less water, we make higher yield, but sometimes that's just not going to happen. And I think that if it's $10 an acre inch cost to us as the farmer to put out an inch of water on an acre of land, then we need to make that $10 pay for itself. It needs to be irrigating the crop when we need it, and it needs to be responsibly using the resource that we're blessed with. That water is not free. And if it's going out on the field, it's not staying in the pond or in the aquifer underground.
Right. So I've been to Maryland, like a farm in Maryland, right, where they actually use water from the wastewater treatment plants.
Mm-hmm.
It's been treated to fertilize. Not fertilize, to water their crops and stuff like that. What's your thoughts on that? Do you think that that's a direction we could be headed?
I think that's been used for decades in stuff like the dairy industry. They're irrigating lagoon water from the dairies. They're watering the manure into a large pit, and the liquid portion of it they're running through their sprinklers. And while that is great, there's certain obstacles that come along with that. I mean, obviously, if there's solid particulates in that water, it's going to clog up sprinkler heads. If we continually use that over and over, sometimes we may be irrigating when we don't need to, just because we need to get rid of the waste. And sometimes those liquid manures like that can come with really high levels of phosphates and other nutrients that we may have adequate levels of. So, it's fine that we're getting some free fertility, but there's multiple nutrients that crops need. And often the one that we have the most of is the one that's found in the manure. So sometimes we're going to need alternative fertility other than just what's in the lagoon water.
Okay. So let me ask you something about the future. Where do you think, looking at the entire United States, right? Where do you think we're headed in terms of sustainable agriculture in the next 50 years?
I think that we're going to have to become even more consumer oriented in our production practices. Organic, green, sustainable, all these catchwords that you hear on TV every day. At one time, the farmer on the farm just heard that and thought, who cares? I'm going to do what I've always done. It's not going to make a difference on what I'm getting paid. But what we're seeing with an increased global supply and global market that we're driving towards, the companies are willing to pay more for something they can prove is organic or prove is sustainable. And it used to be the people that were willing to pay for that were a small part of the market share. But what you're seeing is there's more millennials and more Gen Zs or Xers or whatever they call them, the younger crowd. They're becoming a higher and higher percentage of the people with money in their pockets ready to buy a product. And so I think the global market is going to drive more towards somebody that's willing to say, yes, I grew this cotton on my farm using a third less water than somebody in China or Venezuela or Brazil. And so I think the people that are willing to pay a premium for that particular type of product are going to get rewarded the most and have the most to prove about their product.
And I think that's the way we're going too, because everybody, for example, in the poultry industry, we know there's a big push for free-range chickens.
Yep.
As composed to 10 years ago, we didn't really care where our eggs came from.
Absolutely.
It's this big push, especially in Europe, where they don't condone caging chicken using the cage system.
Mm-hmm.
Everything has to be free-range, and I think that is also stemming over into the United States as well. So yeah, you're correct. Everybody, you pay a higher premium price. Because
that's right. And of course it has to be, because it costs more to raise a free range chicken than it does one in a 2-foot square box.
Yeah.
Just because you can't fit as many of them in a house. So that becomes a challenge.
Yeah, that's very true. And again, it's all about convenience, right? Convenience and money. So that's what it actually boils down to. So my last question to you is that, what advice would you have for any young person that decides to study or go into the agriculture industry or even to start an extension career?
My first caution is agriculture is always going to be one of the biggest, if not the biggest career in the world, because everybody has to eat, everybody needs a house, and everybody needs to wear something. And agriculture is tied to all of those. So it's a great, awesome, fulfilling career, particularly on the agent side of that. If you have a heart for servitude, a thirst for knowledge, and you really have a passion for agriculture, I don't think there's a better career than being a county agent. I mean, you're serving the people that are producing the food you eat. You're helping them to learn how to be better stewards with the resources God has so richly blessed us with here in our country. And it's really fulfilling to me when you help a producer solve an issue or identify a pest or overcome a weed that's resistant, something that you do to help them there on their farm. When you walk off their farm and they shake your hand and say, man, I really appreciate you taking your time out of your day to come and stay here on my farm with me and help me fix this, that means a lot to me. And, as far as agent goes, I don't think there's a better way you could reward me than do that.
Very well said. Because one of my ideas was that research needs to be farmer oriented.
Absolutely.
We need to be solving the problems of the farm. I mean, I understand the molecular research and all that is great, but the problems of the farmer is what we need to be focusing on. And I think a lot of institutions tend to lose that that vision. Because, like I say, if we solve their problems, we eat.
Well, and I think that's one of the biggest disconnects between some of the researchers. Some people are the smartest people you've ever met, but if they don't have the field experience to understand, some research theories are not scalable to a farm level. And there's a lot of money that's invested into research theories that are never going to be practical. And I think that when you have the farmer there on your shoulder, reeling you back into reality, I think that goes a long way.
Yeah, I think I believe in that too. That's good. All right, Seth. Well, thank you very much for spending this time with us, just to get an insight on extension and some of your views on extensions. We greatly appreciate that. But thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank y'all for having me. I enjoyed it.
No problem.